Welcome to the Clarinet Ninja Podcast. My name is Jay Hassler. As always, I'm doing my best to bring you the finest in clarinet information and entertainment. Today on the podcast, we have the person you are listening to right now. His name is Julian Bliss. He is a fantastic clarinet player. You probably have heard of him. His career started when he was very young and has done nothing but go up. And he has recorded these two concertos, the Lindberg and the Aho. These are pieces I didn't know, but I was glad to get to know through these recordings. They're terrific pieces, and unlike most of the clarinet literature that we know, you're going to love it. These recordings are on Signum Records. I'm going to have links to those, of course, in the description, the show notes, all that. And I'm also going to have links to myself. If you're an adult clarinet player looking to put your learning on the fast track, the Clarinet Ninja Dojo is the place for you. Got a couple different classes that meet, and we do some incredible learning on the clarinet and have a great time doing it. So check that out. I'll leave links for that. So I just want to say thank you, Signum Records, for allowing me to play this music on this podcast. I'm not playing very much of it because I want you to go get this music for yourself, but you will get to hear some of the components of these pieces and the clarinet playing that we talk about, as we're going to talk about it all. I hope you love it. And if you do, like, subscribe, the whole thing. If you don't like and subscribe, whether you like it or not, I'm happy to have you here. So in any case, here we go. Julian Bliss, take it away. Julian Bliss, thanks for being here. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. The other day I was on Facebook and I saw that you had released a brand new recording. Can you tell us what's on this recording?
So this recording is actually quite different to the one that came out previously. And these are two incredible concertos. Firstly by Magnus Lindberg and then Kalevi Aho. And both Finnish composers, both written similar sort of time. And interestingly, at one point, they both studied with the same composer as well. So it's interesting finding the similarities, but also the differences between the two works. And I sort of consciously wanted to do something different to my last album. I mean, the previous one was music by Clara and Robert Schumann. Yeah. So very lyrical. Yes, it's all about the line making a lovely sound, legato, really sort of, I hasten to say like simple melodies because they're not, but you sort of reduced to the most basic things in some ways, make a nice sound, nice legato, and create something from such a beautiful melody. And this recording is quite different. There are those elements though, certainly in the slower sections where it's incredibly beautiful lyrical playing, but yeah, there's some times where you're also flying around the instrument and doing all sorts of interesting things. So it was a lot of fun to record, actually.
There's nothing simple about what is on this new record. It's very engaging, but it's not like you get a melody that's 8 measures long that goes up to the dominant and then comes back down to the tonic, and it feels wrapped up like that. None of it. For me, I'd never heard either one of these pieces. To listen to a piece for the first time.
Okay, nice.
I mean, we don't often get to do that, right?
No.
Like hear a piece for the first time. And I was really struck by how virtuosic these pieces are. I mean, my first question, easy, was this all recorded over the stretch of a couple days? Did you work both of these pieces to that point to play? Like it seems like a lot of work.
Yes, it is. It is a lot of work, but I seem to remember it was about 2.5 days, possibly 3, but I think it was about, just say 2.5 days of recording. So there's a lot of music to get in amongst that time. And even the recording process, I found over the years, you have to be in the right mindset for it. And I mean, imagine you have to be playing your best playing for, let's say 6-7 hours a day. And every note that you play has the potential to make it onto the record. So of course, not everything's going to be perfect. There will be some takes that you use and some that you don't, but at least in your mind, you have to think about the long game, first of all, It's very, very different to a performance where you can put all of the energy into a 27-minute thing. But I find it really rewarding and a huge amount of fun. But yes, I mean, it was a lot of work, and credit to the orchestra. I mean, they are simply incredible. And I knew they were before going into this, but there are some orchestras that would need a lot of rehearsal, and they just played it. They just played it, and maybe one or two things we changed here along the way, but it was amazing, and made my job even easier in some ways.
Well, one of the things that was really obvious listening to the recording was the role of the orchestra was significantly different than we're used to in Weber and Mozart,
Oh
and
yes.
and even in Copland, which is still relatively new in comparison. Like,
Mm.
yeah, the orchestra was playing much more of a partnership role than a background role. So
Definitely.
yeah,
It's in both concertos a very big orchestra. I mean,
yeah.
we're talking full brass section, full percussion section, and I guess the most unusual is that the clarinets in the orchestra, which normally you wouldn't have for a clarinet concerto. But yes, first of all, it adds a different flavor and opportunity for much more, maybe not much more, but more interplay from the orchestra to the soloist, and more conversation, if you like.
Well, no, I don't mean to cut you off, but that was
Please.
one of the things that was most notable to me is how an orchestra member would join in on your line, change the color of it, and then come out, and then it was very much used to influence how the clarinet was sounding, and it did a lot to change the color that you were able to get from the piece in general. It was very, very exciting to hear all that.
Yeah, and they're both very well. I mean, of course, very well written. In as much as there are times where you are amongst the sound of the collective sound, and there are other times where you cut through in a solo line. And with a big orchestra, you have to be very careful that the soloist isn't just covered all the time. But actually, the Lindberg, it was written Kari Kriku, he said to Magnus that he wanted something with a big orchestra that was a lot of power, and because often we do have smaller forces and we're at the front, and he wanted something big and powerful, which I'm very happy about, because I love that sound, and love that sort of the expanse of the orchestra at these huge moments, but then also can reduce down, and we have this really, really delicate couple of sections that are entirely different, and it gives a real nice balance, if you like.
Well, one of the things that I heard, and I think I heard it in both pieces, that I've never heard in a clarinet concerto before is a gong. Was there a gong?
Yeah.
But yeah, right. Like what?
I remember the one particular spot in the Aho going into the fourth section. So after I had to kind of glissando motif down, and then there's a huge gong tam tam hit, and then the brass come in, and I remember every time saying, "Can we have that louder? Can we do it?" And finally I said, "Okay, can we do one more?" And the brass and the percussion, I want everything you've got, just the full power. And they did one, and I said, yes, that's perfect. I want that. I wanted the power. I mean, it completely filled the room, and more. But yeah, I sort of really embraced that, and I mean, thinking about it, when it comes to orchestral repertoire, I always gravitate to the larger pieces. You know, just Mahler, for example, where there's huge orchestra and you can create such an amazing sound. I always sort of gravitate to those pieces. So maybe these two concertos suit me well.
They definitely feature what you can do on the clarinet incredibly well. I mean, these ask a lot of the clarinetist, right? There's I wouldn't say it's like full on extended techniques, but you're definitely doing tremolos that make the instrument sound slightly out of tune, and then I think I heard multiphonics or growling or flutter tonguing or other things. Can you talk to us about what it asked you to do that is Mozart didn't?
So the Aho probably has more of those extended techniques than the Lindberg. In the Lindberg, there's a couple of multiphonics, and before the cadenza also glissando. It says glissando with your teeth on the reed, which is enough to make anyone shiver. But when you can get it right, and it's always a bit of a risk in performance, when you can get it right, it's a really cool effect. But in the Aho, there's a whole movement that is essentially just multiphonics and various tremolos and sounds, and it's very shimmery, very mysterious, and that's for those of us that use multiphonics, we know they can be quite fickle at times, and sometimes they work lovely, and another time seemingly nothing has changed, but they just decide they don't want to work anymore. So to string a whole movement together of multiphonics has its challenges, but that's the beauty of recording. You can you can put it together with a couple of takes. But there are, I think, some composers can overuse extended techniques because they're there, and I think these two concertos are very clever. That it's not look at this extended technique, check this out. It's solely used as a color or as a certain timbre, and I don't think they're overused at all. And really, I think they add to the pieces and the effect.
I totally agree. That was one of the things that was very notable, is that they served the piece rather than check this cool stuff out you can do on the clarinet. I feel like a lot of times if a piece is straight up 20th century, it's like a circus act. This had elements of a circus act because the clarinet playing was so good and so difficult. Like I was listening to it thinking, I don't know if I can ever play something like that. That's hard. The extended techniques were definitely put in there in a way that added to the piece without even, I mean, I would say without even distracting. I mean, it definitely felt very integrated in the piece. I'm sure you would agree. Some multiphonics come out so much louder than other ones.
Yes.
Did that present a particular challenge in this piece? Or?
A little bit, yes. And adjusting, of course, in the Aho, there's suggested fingerings for each of the multiphonics. And sometimes I adjusted one ever so slightly to try and make the sound match the note before the multiphonic before in this case, and to really try and get a phrase, or that it sounds like two individual instruments playing at the same time. But that was a lot of practice, a lot of probably annoying my neighbors in the beginning, squawking around on the instrument. Actually, I remember the weekend before the recording, I was actually in Nashville officiating one of my best friend's weddings, of all things. I mean, they're just master ceremonies, if you like. And I said, I'm sorry, I have to find time to practice. I didn't on the wedding day, but the days leading up. And my friend said, well, you can practice at our house. We've got some people over, but you can go into the other room and practice. So I was in there for maybe 3 hours and I walked out. He said, what were you doing? There's all these sounds and squeaks and squawks and this and that and flying around. And I could only imagine what his guests thought.
Well, here's what I'm imagining. I don't, you're not, you're younger than me, and I grew up in America. You did not. So this may not have the cultural impact for you. Do you know the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So all I'm imagining is, your friend is saying, oh, my friend Julian Bliss, he's a world-renowned clarinet player. He's fantastic. He's going to be practicing later. Yeah. And then you go in there and do that. And then you come out and you say, never had one lesson.
Yeah, exactly. So I apologize to him about that, but yeah, needs must.
Yes. Getting into the pieces themselves, like getting into the nuts and bolts of playing them, there seem to be, and I want you to talk about whether, how it was done, whether it's time signature changes or just different groupings. The thing that really stood out from a musicianship standpoint was how clearly you were able to switch from duples to triples to sometimes fives or sixes or different things. And I'm wondering if you could share with us how you got good at that. It just sounds so beautiful how I can hear the subdivisions in your playing in a way that really helps clarify and help the listener get an expectation of what's coming, what just happened. Because there's a lot of notes and they're going by very, very fast, but it was so organized. Like, do you have any secrets you can share with us? And particularly me, because I want to know them.
I think, and this is not just for these two pieces, but any play.
Yeah.
Our tendency and what I tend to hear quite a lot is exactly that. The relationships between tempos are not always completely solid. So, I mean, let's take Mozart Clarinet Concerto. The first couple of lines or first couple of bars tend to have longer notes than the preceding few or the next few. So what tends to happen is people take their time on them, and as soon as they get to the 16th notes, then they rush and the tempo moves on. And it's often, I'm thinking Mozart again, often you have a long note held straight into a run of 16th notes, and then you rush. So a very simple thing I do is always, I look at least a bar ahead. And if I'm playing, let's say, a whole note and the next bar is 16th notes, as I'm playing that, I will have 16th notes running through my head. So by the time you get there, you know exactly the tempo that it needs to be. And you can sort of just very kind of graciously step onto that and rather than stumbling in. And I think, of course, practice with a metronome is very important. Very, very important. And I think even pieces that we know very well, it's good once in a while to go back and put a metronome on. And even play the quote unquote easy stuff at the same tempo. I think of what a lot of us do when we're young is that we play the easy parts faster and then we slow down for the hard parts. And then the relationship between the tempos is between the bars even is not crystal clear. What I did with this piece in particular, and it gets more complicated when you have changing meters, and you have to be completely solid. I mean, we have a whole symphony orchestra behind you that are relying on, maybe we all meet on a downbeat of one bar or halfway through another one, or someone's joining you. So if you're rushing or pulling back, it's going to be a mess. So you have to try and be as solid as you possibly can. So what I did actually was the Aho that has the third movement, a lot of changing meters. created a click track, so a metronome that follows the meter changes. And I first practiced it. I mean, at first glance, I looked at it, got the notes under my fingers very, very slowly, and I emphasize that. A lot of us do not practice as slow as we should. Slow enough that you can play every single note and focus on even the legato between each of those notes in the run. And some people might at this point think, okay, well, if you're talking, let's say, the legato between 2/16 notes at the beginning of a phrase, when you're going at, let's say, 200 BPM or whatever it is, no one's going to notice that, so it doesn't really matter. And that's where I challenge people, because I say it does matter, because these tiny, tiny little details add up and give a whole completely different sense to the and feeling to the end result. And to me, it sounds overall smoother. It sounds like each note is not perfect, but has its own individual place. So I realize this is a very long answer and I'm not even finished yet, but I think practice incredibly slowly and focus on the joins between each note and make it as perfect as you can. And then go up one click on the metronome and you do it all over again. This will take a lot of time, whether it's Weber, Mozart, Crusell, Lindberg, Aho, whatever it is. But then over time, I start speeding it up until I'm at 50-60% and I can play it all the way through, no mistakes. And then you go up to there 70-80. And one thing I do, it's actually fairly recently, once I get to, let's say, 100% of the tempo that's written, I will also practice it beyond that. So I'll also practice it 105 and 110% of the stated tempo, so that you have a bit of flexibility. So if everyone's very excited and we've just come back from a coffee break and we're all got a lot of energy and it goes a little bit faster, then you can also do that and it feels very natural. In the end, for me, I think what's very important is to let the technical aspects of your playing almost be subconscious. And what I mean by that is that you practice it so in depth and so slowly and intricately that it's just in your fingers, as we would say. And you don't have to think about the runs, or I need to do this fingering here, this fingering there, or this legato, or this much air for this note, whatever it may be. And it buys you freedom, because if you're not bound by thinking about the technical aspects of what you're playing, you can think about musicality and shapes and lines and phrases and dynamics and, oh, that's a nice sound that the strings made on this bar, or I like the shape that the winds played this phrase, I'm going to try and copy that. And I think that really gives a completely different feeling to the playing overall. So I realize I've taken your question and now sort of digressed, but I think it all relates to the end result. And yeah, it does get difficult with mixed meter things, but I found sort of creating my own click track, my own metronome, if you like, has been very useful for that, actually.
One of the things that I think when I think about your career is how you've gotten to play so many of these pieces so many times, and that's a real, like, I get jealous about that, because I've played some concertos, but I only get to play them every once in a while, and I don't. It's not a regular thing where I can walk on stage and have had this experience 15 times, 20 times, how many times. You've probably played a lot of these concertos many more times than that, of just like this. Oh, this is just another day when I'm playing this, and what did I hear last time? What am I going to focus on? Like, to actually have an iteration of your version of this on stage with an orchestra. Do you find that your performances change based on? Of course they do. Let me ask how they change as you play the pieces more frequently, like times 1 through 5 versus times 5 through 20. Like it must change.
Yeah, certainly. And before that, I mean, it's interesting what you're saying, and it's certainly how I think about it. And I had the opportunity when I was very young and studying and we all we all have this opportunity when we're studying, that we have the time. You have the time to learn music very, very in depth. You can spend 6 months learning a concerto, of course, amongst other things, but you can really take your time. That time doesn't really exist anymore when you're doing it and out there playing. You get a new concerto and you have to learn it quite quickly, in amongst also playing other concerts. So I feel very fortunate that I took the time and was encouraged to take the time to learn these pieces incredibly in depth when I was young. And now the closest thing I can liken it to is it's like speaking a language. And so if I say, okay, today it's Mozart clarinet concerto, fine, I know that. It feels like part of you, and you don't. Of course, there are times where you're always honing and making it better. It's not like this is done and it's perfect and I'm not going to work on this anymore. But sort of the nuts and bolts of what we're doing, it's just like speaking a language, and that then allows your mind to focus on arguably what some people could think is the most important thing, which is musicality and the emotion of what you're doing. And yeah, of course, my playing changes, I mean, subtly, of course, every single time I play a concerto. And it can be the smallest thing, the way the orchestra shape the phrase that I'm then going to play, or the attack, or if there's pizzicato, the sort of attack on the pizzicato that they use. All of these very, very small detail, even the intonation of the orchestra. I mean, certain places in Europe, you're 4/4-2, 4/4-4 sometimes. It happens, and then a lot of other places you're at 4/4-0, which gives a different sound actually to the whole orchestra. So even that can affect. And honestly, there are even times when I think to myself during a performance, well, actually, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try and do a little crescendo here and grow to this note and do this and do that. And there are times when I try these things and I think, oh, that actually was all right. And other times I think, no, that didn't really work. I won't do that again. Now they're not big enough that the audience are going to go, hey, well, I noticed that shape to this note was different. I mean, someone might, and that's fine. But I think when you do these things in performance, it also makes it exciting. Now, of course, I preface this, or my caution is that you have to still remain in the confines of what you're doing. You can't suddenly go and do some crazy stuff, because you'll then make everyone else, the orchestra and the conductor, very nervous. But slight musical changes then can inspire them to do something different, and the audience can always pick up on that. Yes, there are always, you have to keep in mind what the composer wanted, but I think you can have a lot of flexibility on stage to experiment and try different things, and that's sort of what keeps it alive and keeps it interesting and exciting.
It's fun to hear somebody talk about keeping a concert, a classical performance, sort of spontaneous in the same way that a jazz performance might. Not by the same metrics, but the same idea of like, it's not like we practice this and we're going to go and present this exactly like we practiced it.
I mean, you shouldn't. And I think some people try to, and I can understand why. A lot of people don't like the additional jeopardy of putting things in on stage. I mean, some people are terrified to be on stage to begin with, which is a real thing and can be incredibly debilitating, and that can affect your performance very negatively. But I think if you can get to that point and have a bit of flexibility in your playing and a bit of spontaneity, it can really make a difference.
I've told you this before. I've played your video of when you were very little playing the clarinet on TV, and my daughter's very interested in playing the clarinet. You've inspired her. Maybe I had something to do with it too, but it could be you. And I'm having a hard time finding the right clarinet for her. I want her to have an E-flat clarinet, but I can't afford to buy. What did you start on? Did you start on an E-flat, or what was that you were playing when you were little?
So it was a C clarinet, actually.
Okay.
Entirely plastic. even the keys made of plastic, and very clever design actually, because all the keys just snap on and off the body,
Oh.
and they are designed for kids, virtually indestructible, and uses an E flat, I believe, an E flat clarinet mouthpiece. So you have a real mouthpiece, a real reed on the top. You can learn that feeling, the sensation, but the instrument itself is incredibly light. Also a simplified system. And had that instrument not been available, there's no way I could have started on the clarinet. It was just far too big. So I'm very happy that that was there. And yeah, I was shown a variety of different instruments. I didn't really know what I wanted to play. And yeah, I was shown some I was more interested in than others. But then one day I was shown this C clarinet, and almost immediately was hooked, and I was like, yeah, that's the one. That's it right there.
It seems like an incredibly quick journey from you being 5 or 6 playing the clarinet on a national television show to being 11 or 12 and playing the Messenger in front of the Queen, right? That's an unusual trajectory, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I was very fortunate. The place my mum took me in my local town, the music school, a guy called David Johnston, was a clarinetist, and so he became my clarinet teacher. So I had private lessons from day one, and I mean, he was fantastic teacher, and I think I wanted to play all the time. I don't often admit this, but I really didn't enjoy regular school. It wasn't my favorite thing in the world. I did it because I had to. But playing music, that's what I wanted to do. And so I think I ended up having quite a few lessons per week, maybe a couple a week, because he was 5 minutes down the road from where we lived, and that's all I wanted to do. So I think my mum said, once you've done your homework, then you can do that. It's like the thing I really wanted. But I think that really made a difference. Of course, I mean, having private lessons from the off and really learning the instrument. But yeah, I just always enjoyed it. And yeah, it was just what I always what I wanted to do.
A couple questions on the nuts and bolts of this. I can't remember. I believe I've asked you this before, and I don't recall. Do you have perfect pitch?
Yes.
Yeah. And were you aware from the beginning you had perfect pitch? Did that connect up?
I don't think so. I seem to remember sort of realizing when I was sort of doing the examinations that we have. So in England, we have this, there's a couple actually. There's the Associated Board, the Royal Schools of Music, ABRSM, and they do exams. So there's grades 1 through 8, and then there's a few diplomas. So it's sort of a nice benchmark of where you're at. So grade 1, you play a couple of notes, maybe whatever it is, a 4-note scale and a tune or two. By grade 8, you're playing a multitude of scales, arpeggios. You get the idea, and set pieces from a list. And so yeah, I started on them very quickly. And I remember it was one of those where the music theory test and especially the oral tests where they would play a melody and you'd have to sing it back. I remember finding them very easy, and then I think the realization of what this thing was, I just thought I was good at it, I think. And then sort of realized I have perfect pitch, which has been useful.
I had a student a number of years ago that I was teaching privately, and she was a lovely, wonderful kid. She wasn't good at the clarinet.
Mm.
She had perfect pitch, and I couldn't figure out. This is going to sound like I'm being a jerk. I couldn't figure out the results of her clarinet playing couldn't be helped by her perfect pitch, and it really led me to believe that, at least in this small sample size, that doesn't just necessarily mean things are going to be easy. Right?
No.
It's just a tool like everything else. But like, as somebody who's worked really hard, I've tried really hard, I think successfully so, to learn to play clarinet, learn music. I wish I had perfect pitch, because that would make so many things so much easier for me. Right. But I've got a lot of other tools and things in place to allow that to happen. And this 14-year-old did not. Right.
Sure.
So it's always interesting to me to consider,
of course, it has to be a combination of things, and
Sure.
it can be a tool that can help. I found, especially when it comes to intonation, I find I'm very sensitive to it, and will really hone in on it. Actually, another time I remember realizing that my mind was sort of in a perfect pitch, but didn't attribute it to this, was, of course, starting on a C clarinet, learned my scales on a C clarinet. And then when I think I was about 6 or so, and I moved to a B flat clarinet. And it really confused me that the note I was playing now wasn't the note I was hearing. And I had to, in some ways, relearn my scales, because I was used to, okay, I play this note, I hear this one. And now it wasn't that anymore. And as a 6-year-old, it was quite confusing for a bit. So maybe that was another time I realized that something was different.
I also want to know your memory, and your musical memory specifically, is unusually powerful. And I am curious to know when that became something that you were aware of, or when did that become something, or when did it kick in? Were you able to remember stuff for a long time right from day one, or did that something that develop as you progressed, or how did that go?
I guess so. And it would be a good question for my first teacher, because I mean, I remember years and years ago sort of coming across these videos that are now on YouTube. Some of them I'm playing young on TV, and there's one in my school uniform, and I'm playing from memory. And so it must have been something that I was taught very early on. I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think, I mean, I remember doing some of those TV shows, and at no point did I think, oh, what happens if I forget what I'm doing? I mean, we're so naive when you're, what, 5 or something. Rightly so. And I never remember being worried about it. And I think actually on the TV show where I played Summertime, I came in half a bar early, and I just carried on. I probably had no idea I even did it. But I think it was something that was probably taught to me just from the off, and then became just part of my playing, and became quite natural. So yeah, I mean, that's credit to my first teacher.
When somebody has, like you, a skill that seems amplified, when you were learning, did it ever come that your musical memory and your perfect pitch allowed you to circumvent learning some other foundational skill in the clarinet or as a musician?
No, I mean,
No.
you've always got the foundations, the fundamentals are everything of your playing. And yes, I was one of those students, as I think most are, that didn't find practicing scales and long tones the most exciting thing, and etudes, and I wanted to play the music. And I remember clearly the moment of realization, and I went for a lesson with Sabina Meyer, who, I mean, ended up studying with her for a number of years. I think it was 6 or 7 years, if I remember correctly. And just the most amazing person, the most amazing clarinetist. And even as a kid, I always admired her playing greatly. I just wondered how it was possible you could do that on the instrument. And I remember I went for a lesson with her, and I realized over the course of this hour and a half, that there was a level of detail to playing that I simply had no idea existed. And I thought I was, let's say, on my way. I didn't, of course, didn't think I was a great clarinetist, but if you gave me a piece of music, I could learn it, I could perform it. I thought I was doing okay. But it was a big shock, because I wanted to, I wouldn't say wanted to play like Sabina, but have in a similar way, if that makes sense. Not copy, but and I realized where she was light years ahead of where I was, and that was very, very hard to take, actually. And I remember after that thinking, "Ooh, okay, this is going to be really difficult." She agreed to be my teacher, but on the provision that I went back to basics. And I remember for weeks, all I did was long notes and legato intervals. And at the time, when I started with her, let's say 12, 13-year-old, it drove me crazy. I didn't want to do, I'll be honest, I wanted to play music. I wanted to learn, okay, let's get stuck in on whatever it is, Mozart, Copland, rather than sit there and for 3 hours a day just do long tones. But then I really started to pay attention to my sound, to every aspect of my playing. And then it almost became addictive. And what I mean by that is, no, that join could be better. Do it again. And then I'd do it again over and over and over and over again. And I really got stuck into the details. The thing is, for all of us though, in life, we want to see results very quickly. And in music, that just doesn't exist. It will take you years. Yeah, you might notice things becoming easier in a couple of weeks or months, but for it really to take effect, to change your technique or to implement these things can take a long, long time. But I think I'm very glad that I did that and I went back to the basics and really, really focused on those things, because I think it's made me the player I am today and the player I want to be, if you like. So yeah, I always stress to students as much as I can to spend the time. And I know what it feels like as a student, because that was me. I was that person that didn't want to practice those things. But if you want to have the freedom and you want to be able to play whatever you want, then you've got to do it. So yeah, there are no shortcuts, unfortunately.
Have I ever told you my story about my love for Sabina Meyer's playing?
I,
I had a cassette
okay.
of her playing Weber 1 and Weber 2, I think. I can't,
Mm.
well, maybe it was just Weber 1. I can't remember. But I was a kid in Alaska and I put that cassette in the hi-fi, and I learned Weber 1 by ear, just
Wow.
rewinding. And so my college audition tape was Weber 1. And it was me flat out copying everything she did. But it was like I mean, I had a great teacher,
Sure.
but this was like, it was very self-directed, this concept of the performance. And I found, when I moved into the apartment I live in now, I found my audition tape.
Hmm.
And I found a cassette player, which was, that was very hard, but I listened to it and I thought, oh my God. I mean, but it kind of blew me away that I sounded like that in high school, but it also blew me away that I could hear still what I meant to do, like what I meant
Hmm.
to be copying. It was a pretty scattered version of it, but it was really, really powerful to sit and listen to her play that thousands of times, ultimately, just
Yeah,
phrase by phrase, going over it and learning it without looking at the music, which took forever.
I bet.
It took a long, long time,
It's quite
but
something to be able to do.
it was my first attempt and maybe most powerful attempt to combine what I was trying to do as a jazz player
Mm.
and sort of say, okay, what if I approach this like I'm learning a tune? Obviously, it's a long tune, but like, what would that experience be like?
Yeah.
It was very, very powerful, and she through all, I mean, I haven't listened to all of her recordings with that intensity, but
Mm.
she is so fantastic as a player. I've never met her. I like her. I love her playing so much, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I rarely I go to concerts, but oftentimes concerts people put me on the list. She was playing in Carnegie Hall. I guess it must have been 15 years ago now. I bought a ticket. I bought a ticket to go hear her play,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was so good. It was so amazing, and so I mean everything about her struck me as refined, elegant. Her playing, her presentation, everything about her was just first rate. It was just really, really amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
she is. She's I say, a rare person. She can play the instrument like nobody else, in my opinion. She can also teach the instrument, sort of like nobody else. Um, she's also one of the nicest people I've ever met. And in some ways, I spent so much time over there. She sort of became like a second mother to me. And those are your really formative years, those sort of 12 to 16 ish. There's a lot going on there, and I spent a lot of time with her and her family. And I look back, and even at the time, you don't realize everything you're being taught. and sometimes years later you'll remember. You think, oh yeah. But even just how to be as a person, how to interact with other musicians, how to conduct yourself around organizations or promoters, or all of these things, how to deal with adversity, how to, if you get called to go and play a concerto tonight, how do you do that? All of these things she taught me. And I have no words really to describe the impact she had on me. And I
Well,
mean, this year actually it's her last year of playing. She's playing her last concert in December.
wow.
And yeah, I think, and she still, of course, she still plays better than everyone else. And she's decided, I think she has grandkids and horses and things. You know what? She's done the touring, she's done the playing, and now it's time to do something else. And I also really admire that, to have that decision. She's a very strong person to think, no, now's the time. I'm going to leave this. So many musicians, I think, just keep going until the very end. And sorry, it's got a bit dark, isn't it? But you know what I mean.
Well, it is difficult when you've committed your life to get that good at something, and it's difficult to then maintain enough of a life to have other stuff to want to do, I think,
Yes,
quite honestly. And
yes.
it sounds like she's done that. I mean, when I think about her, I think about the strength of her as a person to go through what she went through with the orchestra, and being a female in that orchestra,
Yeah,
and what she persevered and did it. I'm literally thousands of miles away from it, and I was not a fully formed person when it was happening with her,
sure.
but what a testament to strength and perseverance and belief in oneself, and so many wonderful things to model as a person.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, and I've never spoken one word to her, and I wish that I was able to see how she does things, because it's obviously uh, she's able to deal with things and navigate things that are extraordinary on the clarinet and as a human being.
Yeah. No,
It's amazing.
if I could be even half as all of those qualities that she has, I'll be happy. I mean, it's quite something. And yeah, I haven't seen her for a number of years, and I really want to go. And it hasn't worked out for the last, I'll be in England or in Germany and she'll be elsewhere, but it might get a bit easier now. But it's interesting what you said, to have other things, because I think that's very, very important, that we all have other things in life that we enjoy doing, that give you a bit of perspective, that take your interest sometimes. Yes, of course, I'm very focused on the clarinet, and that's my career, that's my goal, that's what I want to do. But it's very important sometimes to have a vacation and go and do something else, or whatever it may be, your hobby, to sort of allow your mind a bit of time. And I think it also makes you a better person.
I totally agree. I tell my daughter all the time, who's 8, Amelia, I am the luckiest person in the world, because everything I do, I want to do.
Yeah,
And my problem is I don't have enough time to do all of it. During different parts of my career, certain things have been amplified more than other things, in terms of, like, how much performing I'm doing, how much teaching I'm doing, where and when I'm doing all these things. And then the introduction of a child then takes center stage of everything, and everything gets pushed to the side. And,
sure.
but it is wild to me, the 20-year-old version of me would have never considered these things that we're talking about. It was just, I was singularly focused. And
Mm.
I'm glad that as time went on, I realized that this can't be everything. And the other flip side of it for me that is also fascinating and a huge part of my life is the adult learner of the clarinet. They've lived a large part of their life. Oftentimes they've retired from whatever successful career they've had, and
Hmm.
then the clarinet is becoming part of their life, or a bigger part of their life. It's wonderful to have a thing that every day you can go find yourself, and find yourself as compared to yesterday or the day before, but also be thinking of what do I want tomorrow, or the next day or the next day? What are my goals? There's a continuum that we can see kind of magically with the clarinet. That's a pretty wonderful thing. I guess it's true with every instrument, but we're not talking about those instruments because they're
No.
dumb. We're talking about the clarinet. So,
Well, it's very important. I admire, and I think it's fantastic, the people that either play music as a hobby when they're young, or through life, or they say, like you say, after they retire, they think, you know what, I'm going to learn an instrument. I think that's fantastic. And like you say, it gives them an escape from whatever else is going on in the world, and um, something to focus on and to build on. And it really does work your mind in a very different way to a lot of other things. So I think it's fantastic, and I always enjoy seeing people excited about playing music. And I think sometimes when we're young and we're studying music, we get some people think, well, oh, if I'm going to do music, then it's either has to be my job or not at all. I think a lot of people forget this middle ground where if you want to do it as a hobby and get better for yourself and play because you enjoy it and maybe have a group, whatever it is, fantastic. That's incredible. And that really sort of shows the power of music to me.
It's always a reminder to me, and a welcome reminder when I'm working with people that don't play professionally and don't have a want to play professionally. They want to play because they like it. That's why I should play the clarinet too, right?
Yeah.
Because it became a different thing. Along it was I've fixed it, but it became a thing where at a certain point I had to really realize sometimes I don't like doing this, and it was never the clarinet. It was the situations I was in that I didn't like, but whenever I was opening my clarinet case and I was thinking, "Ah, when is this going to end? Like whatever, well, that's not good. That's pretty
No,
far away from where this started for me and for all of us, I think. And when I see people who only open the case because they want to, I think that's nice.
that is
That's
very
a
nice.
that is a nice thing. Um,
Well, and inevitably, if let's say the hobby becomes your career, yes, it will take on a very different, it will look very different and take on different feelings and different responsibilities. And there are a lot of additional elements to having a career as a musician than just the playing of the instrument. I always joke, I say, if I could just play concerts every day of the week, I would, and that would be lovely. But that's not the reality of it.
right.
There's a lot of other things. So it is interesting, and you're right to always have that reminder of why you do it. We take it for granted, I think. I certainly did, not consciously, but because it becomes your normal. And I'm not saying I don't think, being able to travel and play, I don't think I'm incredibly fortunate, because I certainly do. But to be able to play, it's just your normal. And during COVID, when that was all gone, it was a big shock. And I remember the first concert back on stage was really surprisingly emotional for me. And I didn't really understand in the moment, walking on, trying to process all these things and also play what was why it was emotional. But afterwards, I think having not performed for a while and then being back on stage really gave me a newfound appreciation for what it was that I was doing, and made me realize how lucky I am, and be thankful for it.
It's nice to have a time to reset. I mean, COVID obviously was a whole
Yeah,
thing to say the
we
least.
can't say those words. Well, we could.
But I had a bit of a thing with the first performance, but that I did after that whole time. But strangely enough, the moment I remember was the first time I'd gotten on the train to go downtown, and I remember standing on the platform, mask on, the whole thing, and thinking to myself, man, I can't believe this is happening. Like I can't believe I'm having an experience that's normal, that feels
Yeah,
normal to me. But it was not the same normal. It didn't feel the same. It didn't feel like, oh, it's like it never stopped. Like I never stopped getting on the train. I knew it had been a year kind of since I'd been on the train. A lot of things happened during that time, some of which, personally speaking, weren't good, although I've turned them into good things. But what it really got me into was having an online presence, which is a big part of my life now.
yeah.
And I didn't know how to use a computer other than how to check email.
Hmm.
And now, I can edit videos, I can record things. I've got 17,000 microphones. Like, what's even more interesting than mouthpieces is microphones.
Oh, don't get me started. I was looking at microphones actually this morning. I don't need any more, but I want more. Actually, I'm looking at an old. It's a Coles 4038, so it's an old ribbon mic. Well, they still make them actually. But they were the BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation, used these Coles for many, many years, and you get a really. I've always found ribbons. Now you've started me. Now we're on. People listening will go, "What are they talking about?" I found ribbon microphones give a really lovely, warm sound to the instrument. Actually, this last recording, the Aho and Lindberg, see, bringing it back round. The solo spot, one of the solo spot mics was a Coles 4038 ribbon, and then we had a pair on me, and then lots of microphones around, including the spatial audio. So with certain headphones, you can and certain systems, you can put the headphones on, and as you move your head, the image will change as if you're looking at an orchestra, and that's cool. So there was microphones everywhere. But anyway, I'm in deep with the microphones and I certainly don't need more, but need and want.
Yeah, I got you on that. I mean, I had to like stop myself from watching microphone reviews on YouTube because I wanted so many of them, and I probably got like 6 or 7, and I need one really. The first one I had was more than enough. But like mouthpieces, like you wanted something to be different today, and it might only matter to you, but it's what it is.
I remember asking, his name's Mike Hatch, who's the engineer for this recording and actually engineered all of my recordings on Signum Records. He is one of the best, just incredible person and incredible engineer. And it was during COVID, I phoned him. I said, Mike, I want to buy a microphone so I can do some recording at home. What would you recommend? And his answer made me laugh. He goes, well, it depends. What are you recording? So, well, because if you're doing contemporary music or if you're doing Brahms or this or that, then you might want a slightly different flavor. And also, where are you recording? Because here, one microphone might work well, but in another space, you might. So I have lots of microphones. I was like, that doesn't help me, but fine. I'll. And it's true. You can lots of small little tweaks that. I mean, it's the same though. The same we were talking about earlier. If there was 2 versions of a recording and one spot microphone was changed, okay, in the whole grand picture, a lot of people might not be able to notice the difference, but it's those really small details that when you add them up, make quite a big difference. And that's how I justified buying lots of microphones.
Yeah, I mean, I've got microphones I can just grab. Yeah, like they're everywhere.
But I also think it's important for us musicians that are going to record to have some understanding of what's going on. I know a lot of musicians that turn up to a recording session. They don't even, and maybe it's fine. They don't care about the microphones, don't care about the spacing or whatever. But I've always thought it's interesting to know why have you chosen these microphones or what sort of sound are you going for? Because you then can hone the sort of sound you want in a recording. I think that's interesting.
I want to further that a little bit because I think when somebody's placing a microphone, they're trying to get the best sound of your clarinet.
Yes.
Right. And we as a player, our ears are never where that microphone is, right? Our ears are always on our head, which is behind the clarinet. And I'm curious to know, in your experience, has that sort of like the change of that feedback loop and like hearing yourself like playing through headphones while you're actually playing the clarinet, but hearing the microphone sound rather than the sound that you normally hear when you play the clarinet. Have you had any thoughts or ideas associated with that sort of change in perception?
Well, it is interesting. And of course, I mean, you could further that, excuse me, that the audience are also not sitting as close as a microphone is as well. So, I mean, and look, it's not as simple as the sound that you hear of me on the album is from one microphone. No, it's probably from the ones that are further away, up high, the space pair, the array up there, and a little touch of the spot microphone. But yes, it certainly does change your and to be able to hear yourself through headphones can, I wouldn't say change your sound, but it gives you a different perspective on what you think you sound like.
Right.
And it was interesting actually switching instruments, different brand, different model, everything, getting a new instrument and hearing the first recording on it, because it's slightly different to the sound I hear in my own mind. And also then the placement of the microphone and the things you can do afterwards. You can change the sound vastly by adding things on afterwards. And you can hear those recordings where that's been done, and it sounds very, I don't know, I can always hear it. Say, well, there's a load of EQ on this, or there's loads of this, or loads of reverb, or whatever it is. So we'd like to try and get as neutral as possible across the board for everything.
I feel like you could change something 1% either way, and that's fine. But you can hear when somebody's changed it so that it actually isn't the sound that came out.
I find, actually, this is what I realize we digress. We're really getting into the weeds now. But I find a lot of clarinetists want a dark sound, and they use that terminology, dark sound. And so what I've heard a lot of people will do is in recordings or even in videos you put up online that you can change the sound and add some things. First of all, they put on a lot of reverb, which, okay, just sounds like you're in a massive cathedral. But also they remove a huge amount of the high end. So your whole sound, they're very muffled. But this, in a lot of people's eyes, gives them that dark, warm sound. But it has none of the sparkle and the harmonics that we also need. And I think, yeah, you can adjust something slightly, but you're always going to sound like you. And if you try and do too much, then you're just going to ruin it. So if you want to make, let's say, quote unquote, a darker sound or a warmer sound or a more focused sound, that starts with you. You will make the biggest difference to that. Then, of course, the instrument you play, the equipment, the reed, the mouthpiece, all of this stuff, that has in my opinion, a smaller impact. But yeah, sorry, I realize this is a sort of thought process that's going down a tangent.
This is all fantastic, and it gives me the opportunity to pivot to the question we all want to know. What mouthpiece are you playing on? What reeds do you play on? What instrument are you playing on? Now, this is for clarinetists really only. Anyone who's not a clarinetist, just click off now.
No, they might find it interesting, hopefully. It was interesting, you were likening microphone collection to mouthpiece collection. I'm not like that, actually. I like to have one mouthpiece that I play and I don't change. When it's worn out, I will change it. But I'm one of those, I just play the same thing every time. So I have a Van Doren BD4, Black Diamond 4, and I played the 13 series, which is 440 pitch instead of the regular, slightly higher pitch. And some of that is the way I play in terms of my innate intonation, if you like, with an instrument. But actually, I found there was a very, very subtle sound difference also with the 13 series compared to the regular. So for me and the way I play in my setup, I found that the 13 works the best. As for reeds, just Van Doren traditional blue box. There was a time it was solely strength 5s. Most of the time now it's 4s, the harder of the 4s in the box. And sometimes 5. So I'd probably say, let's say 4.5. And ligature, I've been playing the Van Doren carbon fiber ligature since it came out now. And yeah, really, really, really like it. And I think it's important. Those all of the above I just mentioned the mouthpieces they're great. They're fantastic. I also know that if something happened to that mouthpiece, I could pick up another one and it would play 90-something% the same as the one I had before.
They're incredibly consistent.
Incredibly consistent.
Van Doren does something amazing.
I have nothing but admiration for that, for them. And what a lot of people don't realize is it's still family owned and operated. And Mr. Bernard Van Doren is in the factory every day, and they are focused on having things to be the highest quality possible and made in France, and it shows really. And yes, of course, there are lots of different options out there, different brands, different models, and I think that's also nice. It's good to have. But for me, yeah, that setup has for quite a while now actually been my go-to. And I think I also there was a time when I had this one-off mouthpiece that was nice, and then something happened to it and it broke, and I didn't have another one, and it was really difficult. So having something that yeah is replaceable, and you can do work to them as well. Of course, you can have customizations done to them as well, and that's a good little tip for any clarinetist, saxophone players. Always have a spare mouthpiece and ligature. There we go. There's a little tip for the day.
I could not
In
agree
your
more.
case,
Yeah, no,
always.
in the case, right? And also, I'll go one step further. Buy the cheapest two reed guard, just two reeds that lives in your case. So in case
Yeah.
your reeds disappear, that you leave them at home, you've got everything that you need. You've got everything in the case prepared for, Armageddon, right?
Yeah, I always, when I'm traveling, yes, I have boxes of reeds in the suitcase, but we'll always split it between that and my clarinet case,
Yeah.
because there have been many times my suitcase go walkabout and it ends up the other end of the world, actually, a few times. But then, you've always got reeds, you can always go and do the concert. Whether you dressed correctly is another thing. But
Well, what mouthpiece did you play before the BD4? Because that's a relatively recent mouthpiece.
it is, it is.
What mouthpieces have you used in your life?
For that, the longest, the one I used for the longest time was an M30, which I also really liked. But
I can grab one it's within reach. I got
there
one
you
right
go.
here. Yeah.
And sort of in between, so I did the M30, and then I had a mouthpiece that was made by Zinner, which was a very, very big and popular company in Germany. And yeah, they made me a couple of mouthpieces with some dimensions that I sent to them, and I quite liked. But then, yeah, when they came out with the BD4, I think for a long time, my Zinner it was very old and very worn out, and it needed to be replaced for a long time, but I just couldn't find anything that gave me every aspect of what I wanted in playing as I wanted it. And then the BD4 came out, and honestly, I tried it. I thought, well, this is great. Let's go and play a concert right now.
I had the same response to the BD4. I got it and I was like, holy crap. Like this is really good. Does the playing on the lower pitch on the 13 give you trouble in Europe? I mean, it would seem like that's counter to what might be helpful to you. So there must be a characteristic in the sound that you're very interested in the 13 versus the non-13, because I feel like that's not helping you
Sure.
in that specific way, right?
Well, the first reason I tried the 13 series is that no matter which mouthpiece I've tried instrument, I always tend to play on the sharper side. And I've come to a point now in my life where I just accept it. That's just the way. Maybe it's something, the embouchure, the air production, something. I tend to be, often I will play half a millimeter. It's not much, half a millimeter to a millimeter longer barrel than most other people would on the same instrument. So that was my first reason for trying the 13. Then the sound, the ever so subtle sound difference was just a benefit for me. So actually, I don't find any issues playing in Europe because of me. I'm the problem. I'm the whole problem. There you go. I'm not gonna at this point not gonna relearn, and it's not an issue really. It's just everyone plays slightly differently and needs slightly different things. So yeah, with this new instrument, most of the time, I mean, I have 64 millimeter barrels up to 66, even 67s, but and also the instrument itself can dictate the intonation. But yeah, I've always tended to play slightly on the sharper side. I feel most comfortable at 4/4-2. If there's a piano playing at 4/4-0, of course it's doable, but I always felt most comfortable at 4/4-2, and also the sound of 4/4-2 I quite like as well. Now we're really into the weeds, aren't we? Jeez.
Well, but let's go further. I feel like our clarinet internally plays in tune better at 441, 442.
Yes. Yeah,
Like
I agree.
if you're trying to play at 440, the idiosyncrasies get more pronounced for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I agree. It just, yeah, everything seems to just be, the world's a better place at 442.
Well, now speaking of instruments, what instrument are you playing these days?
So I have a buffet divine,
Okay.
which is based on this sort of RC bore. And I mean, I tried everything. I tried every instrument out there. And I kept coming back to two of the buffets, the Legende and the Divine, which in some ways is surprising because they're both from different bore families. Um, and it was the sound of the Divine that I loved. And yeah, immediately got one and started playing it straight away and never looked back really. And now I'm interested, maybe to look at some of the alternative woods, the Mopane wood. The Legendes made out of that wood are very, very beautiful and a very nice sound. So, here's the thing with buffet. A lot of people think, well, they have, and they do, a vast amount of models of instrument. And having been to the factory and worked with the people there, some incredible minds. And you can find something that will work for you, that you will love in the buffet family. I'm almost certain of it. And some of these changes are very slight to give a new model or a different take on it or a different wood. And it's really enjoyable to work with such masters of the instrument. And yeah, it makes it such a fascinating process to visit and to even see the factory for a start, but then also to work with the engineers and the designers on things. Is they're real craftsmen of what they
Well,
do.
the margins that are used in mouthpieces, reeds, clarinets, we're talking millimeters, like
Yes.
like fractions of millimeters
Yeah.
at times, and it's real. I mean, if you like, we measure all of our mouthpieces in millimeters. If you take your reed and take just a little bit off, it's a huge. Obviously the reed's gonna have more of an impact on that than it would on, let's say, your lowest tone hole, but
Sure.
still. There's not many places in the world where people are operating to that fine of a measurement, that
Yeah.
really has an impact.
And if they are, often they're working with metal, which then, depending, won't move, which would, it must be an engineer's nightmare because
Right.
you have these very tight tolerances and then you leave it in a case for a bit or travel here and it moves. And then those tolerances are no longer what they were before. So that makes life even more difficult for everybody. But yeah, this year celebrated 200 years and it shows some incredible work, great craftsmen and fantastic instruments at the end of it, really.
Yeah. Let's just circle back for just a second. Tell us where we can hear your new recording and any other recording that you've ever made. How do we get to the core of Julian Bliss?
So all of my recordings are available on all of the streaming services, whatever, pick your favorite. And you can also buy physical CDs. I know they're still available for those people that like to have
It's
something
crazy talk.
tangible in the hands. I believe in all the usual places, and I think even Amazon as well. So yes, and they're all on Signum. Well, not all of them. Most of them are on Signum Records, which is a UK-based label who are, just fantastic to work with. So yeah, very very appreciative of them and all the hard work that they've put in to help me create the recordings that I want to create.
Links will be available to you, your recordings. I want to just double check julianbliss.com. Is that your website?
That is, yes.
And so if somebody wants to check out if they can hear you play live, which would be a real treat for anybody that likes music or the clarinet, they can see you I'm sure, update your performance schedule on that so that they can see, right?
Yep, the performance schedule, there's various places that can be found, and I always try and post also on social media
Right.
where I'm going to be and when. So The next concert coming up for me is a Copeland clarinet concerto, beginning of October, and that's in Liverpool in England. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a lot of fun. And then a nice bit of chamber music and throughout the last couple of months of the year. And there we go. That will be another year done.
Following Julian on social media, you do get a lot of wonderful clips of performances or videos that he's made specifically for social media, which are fantastic. But for me, I saw that you'd made this recording. I was literally on the way into back to school night to meet my child's teacher. And I was like, I'd like to talk to Julian about that immediately. And it's really a wonderful way to, I think, and let me just say, you do a great job of having it be content that invites people in and is self-promotional, but is not blatantly self-promotional or in any way seems like, you're just talking about yourself, which is what social media is, but you do it in a way that I feel.
Because inherently that's what it's about, isn't it? But
you do a charming version of it.
Well, thank you very much. That's very kind.
All right. So, Julian, I'm going to click off and stick around. I've got a couple just questions for you.
Sure.
Okay. So anyway, Julian, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So that was my talk with Julian Bliss. Thank you, Julian, for being here. It was a real pleasure, an honor to get to talk to you and talk to you about the pieces, the clarinet, the whole thing, your life, talking about Sabina Meyer. That was all really, really special stuff. And so if you're still here and you haven't liked and subscribed, maybe left a comment, do it now. And we'll see you next time on the Clarinet Ninja Podcast.